Thank you for staying with us. Let's begin with some energizing ourselves towards a Nigeria that works for all. Many people believe that Nigeria is in a very difficult, an extremely difficult place at that in recent time, given grave insecurity, macroeconomic instability, stagflation, check your dictionary, an alarming education deficit, poverty, unemployment, hunger, religious and ethnic intolerance, monetary and fiscal misalignment, lack of infrastructure, oil theft, the highest debt burden in the country's history, and pathologically dysfunctional institutions. Please.
Long list, huh?
Quite a list, and certainly inexhaustive. Don't get me wrong. Other parts of the world are having their own challenges as well, but we're not in other parts of the world. We are in Nigeria. So how do we make our own situation different? That's what our conversation will center around today. How we can get the quality and capacity of leadership that will enable transformational development in Nigeria. A leadership that ensures that every Nigerian can eat at least 3 meals a day, a roof over their heads, clothes on their back, sleep with 2 eyes closed, and an inexhaustive list of desires. Let's bring on 2 people this morning to have this conversation with us. Charles Ayore is principal partner of the UK-based Dion & Associates. He joins us from Kent virtually. Thank you for joining us this morning, Mr. Ayore.
Morning.
And we also have with us Oyebisi Oluseyi, Executive Director, Nigerian Network of NGOs. He, is joining us from Ibadan. Thank you for joining us this morning, Mr. Oluseyi.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right. Let's begin with you, Mr. Oluseyi. For you, where you see it, and from the issues that we have been discussing for many years, how far away are we from Uhuru?
I think it's still a long walk to freedom, and there's so much that needs to be done. When you again look at the statistics we've been quoting since 2022 of about 133 million Nigerians living in multidimensional poverty. And as at 2023, the World Bank estimates that we have about 84 million Nigerians that are living below the poverty line, which is $2.15 and equivalent of 1,966 naira if you're using the CBN rate. So that shows you that we still have a long way to go in addressing many of the dynamics or elements that you've mentioned today. People being able to have housing, good education, access to good roads, infrastructure, water, again, being able to sleep in ways that you're not bothered about your security. We still have those challenges with us, and that's why I said that it's still a long way to freedom.
Mr. Ayore, are we on the way?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. What I will say is that I agree with Eluche, we're still a long way off. But what you're asking basically is what we describe in financial services as expectation. So what are the expectations of the common man in Nigeria? The expectations have not been met since 1960. Now, expectation basically is that if you fry a dumpling, whether it's akara or of local colors, they look alike, but they don't taste the same. The expectation is different. Now, the only way you can deliver that expectation is to work through what is called an institution, about the institutional framework. That might sound very big English, institutional framework, but the institutions we all know about are schools, secondary schools, primary schools, and the rest of them. These are institutions. And what marks them out? What marks them out is that when you go into a school, you can tell a teacher apart from students. The headmaster is not likely to bring a professor of mathematics from one student or primary 1 student. Neither will he promote a primary 1 student into from 5, because he knows clearly he's setting him up for failure. Now, if also does that, it means that he wants to do all the work in the school. Governments, in effect, are a bundle of many institutions, just like the schools. And if those schools are not good, you're not likely to send your children there. Those sending children there is like investors from abroad or from Nigeria. Now, if all of those things have failed because the power vacuum since 1960 has not been properly filled, and the elite fidel's lost, it means that when you put people in the wrong places, you encourage a culture of impunity. That culture of impunity means that 1 + 1 will never be. I hope I've answered your question. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure you did answer the question because you only raised more questions if you ask me, Mr. Iyore. So let me stick with you for a minute. You took us back to independence.
Yes.
Perhaps what you're trying to point us to is that there are structural, infrastructural, soft infrastructure or hard infrastructure, whichever one, that are bedeviling our development. If that is what you're saying, could you point us in the direction so that the viewer can understand what you mean with the issues that you have raised? Have we been focusing on the wrong things? If we need to realign, what do we need to realign? Because people feel the impact of these things. We don't even know the things that are bringing on these impacts.
Yes. I don't want to carry on an elite conversation. What I told you basically, that whether it's the local government, the state government, or the federal government, it's basically a bundle of institutions. And that word institution can be confusing, which is why I said use a school as an example. Use a school, that's an institution. How does it work? And I've told you, so that becomes a basis for you to do a comparison. I said the head teacher of a school will set out the parameters of who can be a teacher or who can be a teacher. All right? All right. The next stage is that he will also be setting who employs the teacher is fit for purpose. They won't bring a professor of mathematics to come and teach quantum economics to quantum physics to primary 1 people. You get what I'm saying? And then he will also not ensure that from primary 1 people is not in Form 5. He will fail the school site from the very beginning. And I'm saying that all of these things, which is like laying out the stalls, which is filling up the power vacuum that came in 1960, have been done with the best level of dishonesty. So if you say the military took us a wide drift apart, now that we have civilian rule, what are we doing to ensure that these institutions are fit for purpose? That's what I've said. And I don't know how better to, because it's not going to details of power supply and financial services and currency. You confuse the man on the street. He knows what the school is. He knows the kind of school he wants to send his child to. He knows why he sends his child to that school. This is why your investment is not working.
Mr. ABC, for the ordinary Nigerian out there, a Nigeria that works would be one where he can send his child to a good school, he can feed his children, he has got an education and he will get a job that will pay him based on his qualification. If he's a farmer, he's free to go to his farm and he's sure that he can farm in peace. All these go into this thing about making, and more go into this making Nigeria work for all of us. What things do you think are crucial when we're talking about making Nigeria work?
There are a lot of elements that we need to think through. Of course, the historical perspective provided by Mr. Iyore should also be in context. But to now look at the way forward and looking forward to, if we say we want Nigerians to earn decent living, what does that mean? It means that there has to be jobs, there has to be businesses, small businesses, macro, and the MSME sector has to be properly situated in ways that ensures that people can get some level of jobs there and decent living can be earned. And you also want to look at policies of government, those around social protection, those around job creation, those around ensuring that security is guaranteed. Then you now look at the people that would implement those policies. And I think that's where the institutional conversation comes in. If I say I want to go to Lagos, There are a lot of things that are involved in me getting to Lagos, from the car that will take me, the driver that will take me, and also the fuel and all of those bits. So how do we look at when government says we want to do this, the aspirations or the policies that has been couched or the implementation of the budget, as it were? The infrastructure, which is the people that would implement that, the civil service that would implement that, is very, very important. For example, the president decided to say we would give 50% slash to the cost of transportation. The facility, the train facility, would have to be used. Look at the infrastructure that would deliver that. Look at the racketeering that we saw in the delivery of that. So sometimes when government itself is on that path, you say, okay, this would be our policy direction. Let's focus also on those that will implement that. The systems that we have to implement that are also very much important. I think we need to pay critical attention to those as well.
Mr. Yore, this Nigeria that we're all aspiring to have, this Nigeria that will work for all of us, that's a big ask to start with. Do we have the kind of leadership that will give us this Nigeria that we all yearn for?
Well, what I always say basically is that for anyone to become a president or wherever, leader of thought, he already has courage. That's what you require as a leader. But who is in your court? Who are your senators? At the local government level or state level or federal level. Senators, not in the sense that you say it, advisory that it takes. What is the quality of its advisory? The best any university or institution can give you what they call tools of analysis. When you get there on the field, you must be able to determine and conceptually say what the challenge is. Then you know the kind of tool to apply. It's maybe like in golf. You can't use a big thing to hit the smaller one. Now, what I'm telling you basically is that every time you appoint the wrong person, every time you make the wrong decision, anywhere, in any institution, what you're encouraging is a culture of impunity. And what we've done basically is even the monsters created, the colonial master, the military rule, fell into a significance to the monsters we're now seeing under civil rule. That is a challenge. There needs to be an elite consensus to say, we want to go ahead this way. Resources are there, without a doubt. Without a doubt, the resources are there. If you don't understand first the concept of money, you understand how utilities and markets are developed, you're just going to be running around in circles. You work it till the night hours, you work forever, nothing is going to be achieved. If we change our mindset, say, look, what we want to do is that ensure to work well. You can change the tone of the country in 90 days. 90 days. That's what I said. 90 days. I know it's been taking 40 years to get to this stage. 90 days. You can change the tone of government. You really know what you want to do. That, in my view, is what has to happen first. We start asking what to expect. Thank you.
So you say with elite consensus, we can change the tone in 90 days. 90
days. I want to say the third and 90 days.
So
because basically, let me assume you are the head of you are the teacher at the primary school. You have to create discipline in that school. Kid is rude to you, talks to you the way he likes, and you say, oh, kid is disruptive. You send the kid out. The master comes and says, Shay, you have to go off the best days. You get what I'm saying? What I'm saying is physical, but if you take it to the realm of decision making, you begin to understand the implication of raising a culture of impunity.
So
where we are.
Now, essentially what you're saying is we don't have that elite consensus yet.
No, we don't. We're fragmented into all kinds of divisions. There's all the tribe, tongue, tribe, and creed, nepotism. Strangely, also keep those things going on by strange rituals of loyalty. And that's pathetic. Unfortunately, all of Africa copies us.
Now,
so we're really on the hide into nothing.
Okay. Now, I want to believe that these elites that you're talking about are spread across all sectors, not just political.
Oh, from the whole. That's why I told you all levels of government.
All levels of leadership.
All levels of government, even the house.
Okay. So, what do we need if you can hazard a guess, to jumpstart the need, that desperate need for the elite consensus? What needs to happen?
There's something called a case study. Let's go to what Mr. Oluseyi said. You want to do cash transfer payment, you want to allow people to travel, but so and so. Those things don't have to be done by cash. They can be done by vouchers. They can be done by food stamps. They can be targeted. The basis of all this kind of graft will no longer exist. But if you do them knowing fully well that they're inappropriate, it means you already know where the end is going to be. Must be dishonest.
Mr. Oluseyi, now that you have been cited as a reference case in this matter, I see perhaps the challenge that Mr. Ayora is talking about here is that of communication. To have consensus, there needs to be communication. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I totally agree with you on that. And I'm not sure whether in a democracy you can get consensus of all, because, there's the diversity of opinion, of thoughts, all right? And we are all allowed to have, that expression of how we think and how we want to behave, but in ways that ensure that we're not harming each other. What I do think is we now need a policy direction that can get us to where we are. And without, I like that 90 days ambition, all right? And I do also want to be an incurable optimist. When you look at some of the policies that we do have coming from the federal government at this time, they may help us, all right, if they are properly implemented to jumpstart that way forward. Look at the 3 million technical training or technology training that is being planned by the Ministry of the Communications. And when you look at also, we do have some social protection element, all right, the school feeding program. While those may not necessarily go to scale, when we jumpstart that and we implement those properly, I think it's a proper implementation, ensuring that we can block leakages. All of these can be, implemented using technology, like Mr. Yoris is trying to tell us to say. Some of these things you can put systems around them in ways that reduce human interference. Then we can now begin to track progress, look at where we may have failed, quickly learn lessons and retool. Then also expand, look at, the planting program that the government also highlighted for 2024, looking at planting wheat, rice, supported by AFDB. We need to see those being properly implemented. It is about implementation. And that's why I go back to that structure. I would implement it. All right. Look at the business. All right. I've started my business. I'm able to get the right answer.
Butting in, Mr. Oluseyi, the former president, Professor Osinbajo, at a public event, beg your pardon, former vice president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, said at a public event that, look, some people are exploiting the system, our fault lines. And these fault lines are made up of culture, tradition, religion, and in fact, another, leadership consultant dared say one of our fault lines is our leadership system. We are trying to superimpose democracy on a monarchical culture. Now, if you see these things as a challenge themselves, and you're talking about the infrastructure that are supposed to execute some of these wonderful, laudable policies that you talk about, how do we go about it? How can the cultures, what would be the selling point for us to tell anyone, lay aside your primordial sentiments, let us build Nigeria first, and then we can make our cultures, our traditions, our allegiances and our alliances to these other sentiments second place. How do you think that can happen? Bearing in mind that the first thing anyone wants is their own personal interests.
So we can't take away that personal interest, and in doing that, there's a need for a rebirth. What is my role? What is your role? And how do we see this for the collective? We do not want a system where we're all selfish, right? And we're expecting the other person to come beg us before they can eat. If we have a consensus that we need a country where all of us can afford decent living, that my role, your role, helps us to get there, whether I am X or Y or B or Z, our diversity, how do we manage it for the collective good? And this is where we have a role for civil society, especially faith-based organizations, and also the media, in helping to create that awareness that is needed. But also at the individual level, at the family unit level, we all must change. That rebirth must happen, such that if I have a role in government, whether I'm a police officer, whether I'm a nurse, whether I'm a doctor, I do my work the way I should do it. Not coming back to give an excuse and say, I'm not being paid very well, not have X, Y, Z, A, B, C. And that, if I also have been employed to do X, Y, Z, I'm also given the tools to be able to do that effectively, such that my performance, when it is being measured, I'm measured on, I have access to the tools, I have access to enabling environment for me to be able to do it effectively. Then we then ask the question, why haven't I been able to do it effectively? So those fault lines, they would always be there. How do we conscientiously make use of those fault lines in the ways we implement our policies? Understanding poverty doesn't care whether you are a Christian or a Muslim or whether you're male or female. Understanding that insecurity also doesn't care where you are. And it happens, it happens. So we need that rebirth. And how to now get to that position of rebirth depends on individuals. Our selfishness will always play out as humans. Our ethnicity will always play out. But we now need that, being conscientious about how do we move people, especially when you have authority.
Well, Mr. Yore, if you agree with Mr. Oyebisi in any way, again, I come back to the issue of communication. Not just informing people, not just pushing narratives, not just pouring out public relations at people, but how do we communicate some of these ideals? Because before Nigeria can work for all have to be involved one way or the other, unless I'm getting that wrong. So how do we communicate these ideals? We have them in our national anthem. We have them in the national pledge. We have it in the Constitution. So how do we, market these ideals, communicate these ideals that you're talking about to the point that the elites will buy it and communicate same to the people that are their adherents?
Thank you. I heard what you said about the vice president. I don't know any local government in Nigeria where they don't need houses. But point to me one local government where they build the houses and the walls are not cooked. Or they will all not think Los Beja needs to build a house for them. Those who are old enough, they know what Adino Ogunsoye and Ogunlano Drive were, with those simple houses. There's absolutely no reason where every house in Nigeria should not be like that. So if you say you want to take care of housing, what is your national vocational qualification system that ensures that the houses should live? We're not talking about high-rise crashing now. Simple houses. It's 774 local governments. We complain about people compromising the policy positions. Basic things you need to do. If you create houses and you create assets rapidly, you'll be amazed at what will happen to your currency. When England was in crisis, one of the key things Margaret Thatcher did was allow people who own council houses own them. Because they own them, they took care of them very well. Because they took care of them very well, they became assets that would transfer into the bank books, which is why we only lost Midland Bank and became HSBC. But when people want to bring very high-value concepts to very simple things, that's where it hits me. Tell me one local government where there are no houses needed. And tell me why the house needs to be built by Julius Berger Answer those questions, then we can go forward.
Staying with you, with Mr. Yore, in all of this,
Yes.
we cannot dwell on the leadership alone. The people have to be part of this Nigeria that we all want to work towards. How would you suggest that this whole thing, taking from what my partner asked earlier, is communicated to the people so that they buy into this vision and not see themselves as above the law, or they know somebody who can always get them out of trouble so they can get away with murder if they so decide?
Thank you, Alero.
And I'm talking about a country where all of us believe that we have a stake and we are all equal in the eyes of the law.
Thank you, Alero. 2015, when Buhari came into office, an article was widely published saying that hope again was alive. And in that article, I said, let everybody become the hope that they wish for. That was not supposed to remove the position of government. The very act that you go out to vote means that you are giving your own authority, who essentially holds that authority. It means you are ready to work in the system. And there's an extent, there's a limit to which you can be populist. Because consensus, agreeing, no matter how you got the election, I was reading, I don't really know what that matters. Is that authority has been given to certain people. They need to exercise this for the people. Now, he was saying people needed to be ambitious. All right, it's good for you to be ambitious for yourself, go to school, get a degree, your wife, set a family, be ambitious for your family. But somebody needs to be ambitious for the people. People are doing deals to government systems. Who is doing deals on behalf of the country? We haven't had anybody think on behalf of the country a long time. And until you begin to deal with that appropriately, not make decisions in smoke-filled room, you're going to be hiding to nothing. Unfortunately, South Africa copies us. That's the bad part. Thank you.
And that's a very sad one, that Africa is copying our model.
Yes.
Okay. So, it's very interesting. Excuse me. So I saw something, Mr. Oluseyi, in the budget this year, one of the issues that the president and the federal government were trying to resolve is to make life easy for people in the time being, so to speak. Excuse me. Consequently, hence the introduction of what they call the Consumer Credit Fund to the tune of 100 billion naira, which, according to the federal government, is in response to the growing cost of living and increasing borrowing trends among Nigerians. Taking the example of what we heard recently, that the president gave some grains of rice, bags of rice to Nigerians through members of the National Assembly. How do you see this 100 billion naira Consumer Credit Fund in the 2024 budget working?
So, again, these are some of the issues we're trying to situate. 100 billion in the economy is something, but not a lot. However, if that 100 billion goes to those that truly need it and that can use it to transform their lives, then we would have been on that journey to taking as many people out of poverty as possible. So implementation would be where we need to focus, and the challenge there. If this is a consumer credit, my courteous assumption is that I would have access to it for me to be able to buy some of the things I probably may not be able to afford, and then be paying back. All right. Now, those that would implement it, couldn't they go and bring their relatives, their family members, and disguise them as the beneficiaries of this type of interventions from the federal government. And that's why it's hammering on the fact that if since 1960, we've had policies, right, and they've been implemented the way they should be implemented, we would have been taking the needed baby step. Okay. So this 100 billion, it sounds like a lot of money, but not the type of money that we need to quickly get the 133 million people that are living in multidimensional poverty out of poverty. However, it could help us jumpstart that process to getting people out of poverty. Implementation. How do we ring fence that money away from corruption, away from leakages, and to ensure that those that would have access to it have access to it in ways that are decent, respectful, and that they are also able to give back, such that that money can then help the system, as it were. This would be my courteous thinking around this to say, yes, 100 billion is on the table. Implementation. How do we monitor? How do we report back? How do we learn when there are mistakes in the process? But how do we block leakages of that 100 billion? How do we put technology around that? And technologies that won't be failing, so that we still have to have that human interference.
Well, Mr. Yore, I'd like you to superimpose that same issue, but this time on the social investment register issue, which has been on for a while and seems to be gaining some traction a little more now. In the comparing how we implemented the social investment register, the indictments that have come around it, the allegations of the governors that it wasn't working for them, and consequently they believe that it needs reviewing. And now we have 100 billion naira consumer credit fund being worked at. If you were to recommend to the federal government, look, we need to work this well, what would be your recommendation?
Well, I know you have a mandate to get instructions from me, but you're not in for it. I'll tell you what I need to tell you. You have 100 billion that needs to go out to feed who are needy. It needs to come in from the local government. Local governments need to have food banks. Local government needs to have soup kitchens. People are going to donate to it. What you find very carefully is that those in government see themselves as mutually exclusive from the private sector. This is why the palliatives they got wanted to use it to run elections. You tell the local government, this is what you need to do. The vouchers for them to be printed centrally. So how much food is wasted in each of the local governments in Nigeria today? You're amazed when you hear the figures. How much crafts, how much of the children, what the children do at the weekends? They know how to weave baskets, those baskets collected. Those caps, you see them make, northern caps in particular, very high level of tapestry, properly done and properly colored as a major export item. But I really don't know why you create local governments, 774 of them, you disable them, and you throw the money in all the time regularly, expect it to go anywhere when there's no plumbing. You want to throw water into a system and there are no pipes to take it there. See, I don't want to sound as if I'm precise, because what we're talking about now is not just in the recent past. We've been talking about this since 1988.
Wow.
You cannot run an economy that's anchored on the currency that's not produced by you. Anchored our currency, the dollar, since 1988. Published a newsletter. A few people were involved in it who were in government today. We thought we were sub-optimizing at that time. We are still doing that 7 years after. There are 54 currencies in Africa, all of them tanking down, none of them making progress. You don't want to think about that. We really have to decide whether we want to be part. For example, you cannot be part of the World Trade Organization where we have our lady as being in charge, and yet the currency is not convertible. So what are you talking about? Currency is not convertible. What do you need to, if you do all the things that you need to do to make the currency convertible, you're amazed at all the ways to be cut off. These people are not ambitious for the country, they're ambitious for themselves. And that has to happen. So until that happens, I mean, we knew what we went through. Ali must go. We joined the Nigerian Forum version of the NEDEC elsewhere. All of a sudden, those who argued for structured arrangements, I think it's nothing then. That's pathetic.
Interesting. Alera has another question. Go ahead.
Mr. Oluseyi, what part do you think the family will play in achieving this, seeing as we seem to have lost our family values altogether?
The family sure has a role, and that role starts with how we groom our children. And again, that has to start from the father and the mother. Plus also, how do we see failure? I keep saying it, that, the public schools today are what they are because we all quickly look for alternatives in the private schools. And when you look at the private school system, all right, our children will be able to speak English, but I'm not 110% sure that, some of the values that we need are being given there. Then you have parents that are also interested in their children quickly getting to the university, doing everything quickly, and ensuring that they get results at one sitting and all of those bits. We need to pay attention to God-given roles in the family or whatever we all believe in, to say, as a family, what exactly would be our own family values. Growing up, there were things you can't do. They'll say, I'm not sure you're from that family, because if you're from that family, we know this is how they typically would behave. We need to go back to that. Of course, there are pressures, the economic pressures on families now, whether women-led families or male-led families. There are pressures, economic pressures on all of us. But we need to think through how we are also making money. Okay, what exactly are our needs? How do we meet those needs within our own resources without being corrupt, without getting others, our neighbors, to cry? How do I ensure that the money that I have, I'm spending it on my children? So if my children can go to public school, let them go to public school without pressuring myself that they should go to private school. If I can only, feed one child or two, let me keep within that. Let me not get pressured by a mother-in-law or my own parents telling me to have more than one or more than two. So we need to start thinking that way. And again, families, whether you belong to any faith, what exactly are we being taught? Whether you're a Christian or a Muslim or you are a taught religion, no religion teaches you to steal. And no religion teaches you not to respect your neighbor. No religion teaches you to kill. How are we putting all of these into practice in our everyday life, such that we can say, as an individual, I contribute to, the growth of my immediate community. And it is that growth that will lead to that local government, to the state, and also, to the national whole that we're looking for. How can I, pass one way? And I'm still telling, a governor that I'm a soldier. All right. It shows the level of how, as individuals, we have not paid attention to our own personal roles and our own personal values. Because again, it is what you see your leader do. Sometimes you also do as a follower. So there's a role for both leaders and followers in all of this quagmire that we found ourselves.
Mr. Yore, you mentioned something about 1988, and generally, and so many other things have been affected by our decisions since that time. 1988 to now is about 40 plus years now. So the question that I'd like to ask around that is about national orientation. I remember it was about the same time that we were talking about national orientation in this country. Then it was, I think, MAMSA that the government of the day either came up with or eventually came up with national orientation. For all of the ideals that we are talking about, 40 years ago, the people that are in government today were not in government. Although many of the people who are in government today had some of them who were in government at the time are still fairly relevant now. In making progress, Mr. Iyore,
Yes.
what has been our challenge in terms of national orientation? I'm taking from some of the issues that raised by Mr. Oluseyi from following Alero's question. In terms of national orientation, what do we need to do looking forward to another 20 to 40 years from now so that some of these ideas, we're not talking about the same challenges today that we've been talking about, as you said, over the past 40 plus years?
Well, I've heard Jay's position on all of that stuff. What I can tell, I'll ask you one question first before I answer that question. You can see the abuse pension scheme. You can see the abuse in the Accountant General's office and what happened in Abuja and Port Harcourt. You can see the abuse of the banking system and what has been reported by the investigator's report. Now I ask you, do you think you can explain those ways simply on the basis of character flaws, corruption, or is that a systemic collapse? Now, if you agree that is a systemic collapse, you go back to what I told you earlier on. When you encourage a culture of impunity, people think they can take what does not belong to them. We're in a big problem. I was at Obama swearing in first Obama swearing in. I went to the Nigerian Stock Exchange. We had to tell him then that even 10 became the president of America, as long as there's no homestead, where culture, organized procedures are in play, and where not only the most powerful person can win, and the weak are taken care of, when hiding to nothing. We have examples right here where things have been done. Gentleman that heads JAM, Belly, superstar. The man who ran customs, Belly, superstar. Very many places where things have been done appropriately. Rather than celebrate them and use them as a kernel for expanding that kind of conduct and behavior, brushed over. That's why I told you that the elite has to allow itself to come to a fair and sensible conclusion, knowing they're not going to live forever, determine what kind of legacy they want to leave. What you're talking about is legacy, food to eat, bed to sleep, that, and all of that stuff. I told you, for as long as you have an elite FED, it's continental, I can say it for certain, really on the hiding for nothing. I'm sorry to say.
Well, let's just call this a conversation starter again. Mr. Iyore, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts this morning. Charles Iyore is principal partner of the UK-based Dion & Associates Limited. And we've also had Oyebisi Oluseyi, Executive Director, Nigerian Network of NGOs. He joined us from Ibadan. Thank you for joining us this morning, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So let's take a break now. When we return, there is more. This time, a little more focused. To stay with us.